I stood frozen in disbelief as my mother casually admitted they'd spent my entire vacation fund on themselves. "You weren't meant to go anyway," she smirked. Little did they know, everything was booked in my name, and I was about to teach them the most expensive lesson of their lives. I remained rooted in place, staring at my mother in disbelief. My fingers trembled as they gripped the kitchen counter, knuckles turning white under the pressure. "You canceled my cruise?" My voice came out softer than I intended, but the tension in it was unmistakable. My mother leaned back in her chair, a smug smile spreading across her face, as if she'd just won a game only she knew we were playing. "You weren't meant to go anyway," she remarked casually, sipping her coffee like this was just another ordinary morning. I swallowed hard, fighting to stay composed. My father sat opposite her, his lips pressed together in that familiar guilty way, the expression he always wore when going along with Mom's schemes, while trying to avoid full responsibility. "You spent my savings." I articulated each word deliberately, letting them hang in the air. Mom had the audacity to sigh dramatically. "Oh, stop being so theatrical, Ella," she muttered, waving a dismissive hand. "It was just a vacation. We assumed you'd be understanding." Understanding. That was the word they always used when they did something cruel and expected me to quietly accept it. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. Years of careful saving. Gone. I had planned everything meticulously. The airfare, the accommodations, the excursions. This cruise was supposed to be my escape, my long overdue break after years of putting them first. And now they had selfishly spent it on themselves. My jaw clenched. "So, where exactly are you going?" My mother let out a little laugh, pushing her chair back as she stood. "Somewhere fabulous," she replied. "First-class flights, premium cruise package, everything included. You wouldn't have fit in, sweetie. It's not your style." My father also rose, giving my arm a patronizing pat, as if I were a child upset over a broken toy. "Honey, you'll get over this." That was it. That was the exact moment something inside me snapped. I forced a smile, nodding as if I'd finally accepted the situation. "You know what? You're absolutely right." I could sense their relief immediately. They thought I was surrendering, like I always had. But they'd made one critical mistake. Every single reservation had been booked in my name, and they had no idea what I was about to do. Taking out my phone, I quickly scrolled through my emails until I found the confirmation details for their extravagant getaway. I tilted the screen slightly in their direction and smirked. "Well, look at this," I mused. "Your flights, your cruise, your little getaway." My mother's expression stiffened, her smile faltering. My father's self-assured look diminished ever so slightly. I let out a low chuckle. "I should probably verify everything, just to make sure all the details are correct." I opened the airline's application first. The itinerary loaded instantly. First-class seats, just as she had so proudly mentioned. Non-refundable certainly, but cancelable without a doubt. With a single tap, I erased their reservation. A red alert flashed at the top of the screen. "Your cancellation request has been successfully processed." My mother let out a sharp gasp. "What are you doing?" I barely acknowledged her as I moved onto the cruise website. They had gone all out. A luxury suite, prepaid excursions, gourmet dining experiences. One by one, I clicked through the options and canceled everything. Refund request submitted. The color drained from my father's face. "You wouldn't dare," he muttered, his tone suddenly missing its usual confident edge. I turned my phone in his direction, letting him watch as I confirmed the final cancellation. "Too late." He lunged toward me, trying to snatch the device, but I pulled it back just in time. "Nope," I said, shaking my head. "You see, Mom, I do belong there because I was the one who paid for it, and since you foolishly reserved everything using my name, you unintentionally gave me complete control over it all." My mother's hands flew to her face. "But what about us? We have a flight to catch in just a few hours." I shrugged indifferently. "Guess you'll have to figure that out on your own." My father's nostrils flared. "You ungrateful, selfish..." A sharp, bitter laugh escaped me. Selfish? Selfish is stealing from your own daughter and expecting her to simply accept it. His hands curled into fists, his glare burning with rage, but I wasn't finished yet. Pulling up my banking app once more, I scrolled until I located the transaction from the cruise company. A single tap allowed me to select Dispute Payment and report it as unauthorized. A strangled gasp escaped my mother. No, 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 no. Oh, and just so you're informed, I added casually, when you book a high-end cruise and then those payments get flagged as fraudulent, they don't appreciate it. In fact, they typically ban you from making future reservations. My father's face darkened to an alarming shade of crimson. You little... I raised a finger, cutting him off. Careful, Dad. You don't want to say something you'll regret later. His body tensed, fists clenched tightly at his sides. My mother's voice wavered. How could you do this to us? I smirked. You did it to yourselves. They were supposed to be on their way in just a few short hours. Instead, they now had no flights, no cruise, and no possible way to reclaim the money they had taken. And the most satisfying part? I'm not done. My mother scrambled for her phone, her fingers trembling as she desperately tried to contact the airline. There must be a way to fix this, she mumbled under her breath. Maybe they can rearrange our booking. Maybe, I interjected flatly. You can pay for it yourselves. She turned to me with wide, pleading eyes. You know we don't have the money for that. I crossed my arms. Then perhaps you should have considered that before stealing my savings. My father stood stiffly, his jaw locked in anger. You ungrateful brat! Tilting my head slightly, I feigned curiosity. What was that, Dad? Speak up. I'd love to hear your thoughts right now. His teeth ground together, but he remained silent. My mother's desperation intensified. She scrolled frantically through her inbox, no doubt hunting for some loophole, some last-minute fix to undo the damage. But there wasn't one. Their lavish trip had ended before it could even begin, and they knew it. The only sound in the room was the frantic tapping of my mother's fingers against her phone's glass screen. My father remained motionless, seething, his complexion growing redder by the second. You actually find this funny? He finally spat. Leaning against the counter, I folded my arms. Oh, absolutely. Watching you both scramble after trying to screw me over? This is the most entertaining thing I've seen in years. My mother's head snapped up, her eyes glistening with panic. We just assumed, she stammered. We never thought you'd react like this. One eyebrow lifted. Oh? And how exactly did you expect me to respond? Thanks for completely robbing me? It wasn't theft, she blurted out, wringing her hands anxiously. It was borrowing. We planned to tell you eventually. A scoff left my lips. Oh, of course. Right after you were lounging on a private balcony sipping cocktails thousands of miles away. Spare me. My father let out a sharp breath through his nose. You've never been anything but selfish, he hissed. Always clutching onto your money like you're somehow better than us. At that, I burst into laughter. Oh, you mean the money I worked for? The savings I built while you two recklessly wasted every penny that ever came into your hands? I shook my head. I've been covering your expenses for years. Rent, groceries, fixing your car, everything. And this? This was the last straw, my mother sniffled. We deserve this vacation. We haven't had a single break in years. I stared at her in shock. And you think I have? When's the last time I went on a trip, Mom? Oh, that's right, never, because I was too busy keeping you two from sinking under the weight of your own financial mess. My father slammed his fist onto the table. You owe us, girl. Something inside me snapped. Owe you? I echoed, my tone eerily calm yet ice cold. You're absolutely right. I did owe you. I owed you respect, commitment, and support, until you threw all of that away. Now I owe you nothing. 3 days had passed since I walked out of my parents' house, leaving them to deal with the wreckage of their failed vacation plans. I'd blocked their numbers immediately, but that hadn't stopped the barrage of messages from alternate phones and social media accounts. My phone buzzed again as I sat in my apartment, sipping tea and enjoying the rare silence. Another voicemail from my mother. "Ella, please." Her voice quivered with practiced emotion. "We didn't mean to hurt you. We just thought we deserved something nice for once. Call us back, sweetie. We can work this out." Delete. Another notification popped up, a text from my father's work phone. "This isn't over. You've made a terrible mistake." I smiled grimly and blocked that number too. My laptop pinged with an email notification. The cruise company had processed my dispute claim remarkably quickly. The message was straightforward. The charges had been reversed as fraudulent, and the full amount would be credited back to my account within 3-5 business days. There was something else in the email that made my heart skip a beat. "As a valued customer, we'd like to offer you our sincere apologies for this experience. We've added a 20% credit to your account for future bookings. Additionally, please note that the other parties involved have been added to our security watch list for attempted unauthorized use of your booking credentials." I leaned back in my chair, a strange mix of vindication and sadness washing over me. My parents hadn't just lost their vacation, they'd been blacklisted. Part of me felt a twinge of guilt, but it quickly dissipated when my phone lit up with yet another message, this time from my aunt. "Your mother is in tears. How could you do this to your own parents? They've given you everything." I snorted. Given me everything? They'd given me nothing but financial anxiety and emotional manipulation for years. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as I contemplated my next move. The cruise credit was substantial, enough for an even better vacation than I'd originally planned. With a few clicks, I navigated to the booking page and began exploring options. The suite my parents had selected was indeed luxurious: ocean view, private balcony, butler service. But with my additional credit, I could upgrade to the premium package. I hesitated only briefly before clicking Book Now. Confirmation email received. My vacation was set for next month, the exact same cruise my parents had tried to steal, but with even better accommodations. My phone rang again. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Hello?" "Ella." My father's voice was unnervingly calm. "We need to talk about what you've done." I remained silent, waiting. "Your mother hasn't stopped crying for days. Is that what you wanted? To make your own mother suffer?" "That's rich coming from you," I replied coolly. "Did you think about my feelings when you stole my money?" "We didn't steal anything," he snapped. "We're your parents. What's yours is ours." I laughed, genuinely amused by his warped logic. "That's not how it works, Dad. Not anymore." "The cruise company won't even talk to us," he continued, his voice rising. "They've banned us. Do you have any idea how embarrassing that is?" "Almost as embarrassing as having your vacation canceled last minute?" I suggested. "Or discovering your parents stole your savings?" He made a strangled sound. "We raised you better than this." "Actually, you didn't. I raised myself better than this. That's why I'm not letting you walk all over me anymore." A notification popped up on my screen. Another email from the cruise company. I opened it while my father continued his tirade. "Travel itinerary confirmed," the subject line read. I scrolled through the details. First-class flight, premium suite, exclusive dining package, spa treatments. Everything my parents had planned to enjoy at my expense was now mine. "Are you even listening to me?" my father demanded. "Not really," I admitted. "I'm just confirming my travel plans." There was a beat of a silence. "What travel plans?" His voice had dropped to a dangerous whisper. "Oh, didn't I mention? I'm going on that cruise after all. Upgraded package, actually. The company was very accommodating once they understood the situation." "You?" he sputtered. "You can't be serious." "Dead serious. I leave next month." "After what you've done to us, you're still going to take that vacation? While we're stuck here with nothing?" I smiled, though he couldn't see it. "That's exactly right. Consider it a lesson in consequences." "This isn't over," he growled. "You think you've won, but you have no idea what's coming." Is that a threat, Dad? He hung up without answering. I stared at my phone for a long moment, then set it down. The threats didn't scare me anymore. For the first time in my adult life, I felt completely in control. My laptop pinged again, a notification from my bank. The disputed funds had been returned to my account, plus the additional credit. The numbers on the screen represented more than just money. They represented my freedom. I closed my eyes and imagined myself on that ship, sailing away from all the toxicity and manipulation that had defined my relationship with my parents for far too long. Another text message arrived. "We're coming over. We need to talk face to face." I smiled grimly. Let them come. The knock on my door came exactly 30 minutes later. 3 sharp raps that seemed to echo through my apartment. I took my time answering, deliberately making them wait. When I finally opened the door, my mother burst past me without invitation, her face blotchy from crying. My father followed, his expression thunderous. "Sit down," I said calmly, gesturing to my small living room. "Since you've invited yourselves over, we might as well be comfortable." My mother collapsed onto the sofa, dabbing at her eyes with a crumpled tissue. "How could you do this to us, Ella? After everything we've done for you?" I leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "And what exactly have you done for me lately, besides stealing my money?" My father paced the room like a caged animal. "We are your parents. We raised you, clothed you, put a roof over your head." "When I was a child," I interrupted. "But I've been supporting myself, and often you two, for years now. Or have you forgotten who paid your mortgage last Christmas?" He stopped pacing, his face reddening. "That was different." "How?" I challenged. "How was it different?" "Because we needed help then," my mother wailed. "And now we just wanted something nice for ourselves for once." I stared at her in disbelief. "At my expense? Without even asking me?" My father stepped closer, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "We didn't think we needed permission to access our daughter's account." "That's exactly the problem," I replied evenly. "You think you're entitled to everything I have." My mother's sobs grew louder. "We gave you life. We sacrificed everything for you." I laughed bitterly. "What sacrifices, Mom? Name one thing you've genuinely sacrificed for my benefit in the past 5 years." She opened her mouth, then closed it again, unable to formulate a response. My father stepped in. "We've always been there for you." "Have you?" I challenged. "When I graduated college, you skipped the ceremony because you'd booked a weekend getaway. When I had surgery last year, neither of you visited me in the hospital because, and I quote, 'hospitals make Mom anxious.'" A tense silence filled the room. "We're family," my mother finally whispered. "Family forgives." I nodded slowly. "You're right. Family does forgive, but forgiveness doesn't mean allowing the same patterns to continue." My father's expression darkened. "So what now? You're just going to go on this cruise and leave us with nothing?" "That's exactly what I'm going to do." He slammed his fist against the wall, making me flinch. "You ungrateful little—" "Dad," I cut him off sharply. "Think very carefully about what you say next." His chest heaved with anger, but he fell silent. My mother tried a different approach. "Sweetie, please. We're in financial trouble. We really needed this vacation to de-stress." I raised an eyebrow. "Financial trouble that you created by living beyond your means for decades. And your solution was to steal my savings rather than fix your spending habits?" "It wasn't stealing," my father shouted. It was theft," I stated firmly. "And if you can't acknowledge that, then we have nothing more to discuss." My mother rose shakily from the sofa. What if we paid you back?" I laughed. "With what money? You just said you're in financial trouble." We could work something out," she stammered. "Monthly payments, perhaps?" I studied her face, searching for sincerity but finding only desperation. "This isn't about the money anymore. It's about respect and boundaries." 2 things you've never given me." My father's jaw clenched. "So that's it? You're choosing a vacation over your own parents?" "No," I replied calmly. "I'm choosing myself over people who see me as nothing more than a resource to exploit." He stepped toward me, finger pointed accusingly. "You'll regret this. When you're all alone on that ship, you'll realize what you've thrown away." I met his gaze steadily. "What I've thrown away is the illusion that you have my best interests at heart, and I won't regret that for a second." My mother collapsed back onto the sofa, sobbing dramatically. "I can't believe this is happening. My own daughter." And I walked to the door and opened it wide. "I think it's time for you both to leave." My father grabbed my mother's arm, pulling her up roughly. "Come on, Linda. She's made her choice." As they reached the doorway, my father turned back, his expression cold. "Don't come crying to us when you need something." I smiled sadly. "I never do, Dad. That's always been your role." The door closed behind them with a definitive click. I leaned against it, exhaling slowly, feeling a strange mixture of grief and liberation. My phone pinged with a notification, a reminder about my upcoming trip. In just 4 weeks, I would be boarding that cruise ship, leaving behind not just the shore, but the toxic patterns that had defined my relationship with my parents for far too long. I walked to the window and watched as they got into their car. My mother was still crying, my father's face set in stone as he slammed his door shut. As they drove away, I felt something inside me shift, a weight lifting, a chain breaking. For the first time in my adult life, I was truly free of their emotional manipulation. The price had been high, losing what remained of my relationship with them, but as I turned away from the window, I knew it had been worth it. The cruise awaited, but more importantly, a new chapter of my life was beginning, one where I set the boundaries and wrote the rules. The moment I stepped onto the ship, I felt a surge of emotions, vindication, excitement, and a lingering trace of guilt that I quickly pushed aside. The Royal Caribbean oasis of the seas was even more magnificent than the pictures had suggested. Towering above the port, it gleamed in the afternoon sun like a floating city. "Welcome aboard, Ms. Reynolds," the attendant greeted me with a warm smile, checking my boarding pass. "We've upgraded you to our loft suite. Someone will escort you there shortly." I nodded, still somewhat dazed by the grandeur surrounding me. The soaring atrium sparkled with crystal chandeliers, marble floors, and elegant staircases. Passengers milled about, their faces alight with anticipation. A young crew member approached. "Ms. Reynolds? I'm Carlos. I'll be showing you to your suite." As we navigated through the ship's luxurious corridors, Carlos pointed out various amenities: restaurants, pools, theaters, and shops. "Your suite includes access to our exclusive Skyclass lounge and private sundeck," he explained, "and your personal concierge, Sophia, will meet you at your suite." When Carlos opened the door to my accommodation, I couldn't suppress a gasp. The 2-story loft suite was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the sparkling ocean, a private balcony extended the living space outdoors, and modern, elegant furnishings filled the spacious interior. "This is incredible," I managed. Carlos beamed. "Your luggage will arrive shortly. Is there anything else you need?" I shook my head, still taking in the opulence that surrounded me. After he left, I wandered through the suite, running my fingers along the marble countertops in the kitchenette, testing the plush sofa, and finally stepping onto the balcony. The sea breeze caressed my face as I gazed out at the harbor. In a few hours, we would set sail, and I would leave behind not just the shore, but all the drama and tension of the past weeks. A knock at the door announced the arrival of Sophia, my concierge, a poised woman with a warm smile. "Ms. Reynolds, welcome aboard. I've taken the liberty of making dinner reservations for you tonight at our premier restaurant, Coastal Kitchen. I've also scheduled a complimentary spa treatment for tomorrow morning." I thanked her, still somewhat overwhelmed by the attentiveness. "The ship departs in 2 hours," she continued. "There's a welcome reception on the main deck at 6. Would you like me to arrange anything else for your first evening?" No, this sounds perfect, I replied. After Sophia left, I unpacked my suitcase, hanging my carefully selected outfits in the walk-in closet. I'd spent more than I probably should have on new clothes for this trip, but I wanted everything to be perfect, a complete break from my ordinary life. As I arranged my toiletries in the marble bathroom, my phone buzzed. I'd promised myself I wouldn't check messages during the cruise, but curiosity got the better of me. It was from my aunt. "Your parents are devastated. Your father had to be prescribed anxiety medication. Is this cruise really worth destroying your family?" I stared at the message, feeling a familiar twist of guilt in my stomach. Then I remembered my father's face contorted with rage, my mother's manipulative tears, and years of financial exploitation. Without responding, I turned off my phone and placed it in the safe. For the next 10 days, I would be unreachable. The thought was both terrifying and liberating. The ship's horn sounded, a deep, resonant blast that seemed to vibrate through the entire vessel. I returned to the balcony just as we began to pull away from the dock. Below, people waved at the departing ship, some holding signs, others blowing kisses to loved ones on board. For a moment, I felt a pang of loneliness. Everyone else seemed to be traveling with someone, families, couples, groups of friends. I was entirely alone. But as the shoreline began to recede, that feeling transformed into something else, a profound sense of independence. This journey was mine alone, unburdened by obligations or expectations. I dressed carefully for the evening in a sleek black dress I'd bought specifically for the cruise. As I applied the finishing touches to my makeup, I barely recognized the confident woman staring back at me from the mirror. The welcome reception was held in the ship's grand atrium. Champagne flowed freely as passengers mingled, their voices creating a pleasant hum beneath the string quartet playing in the corner. I accepted a glass from a passing waiter and found a quiet spot near one of the enormous windows. "First cruise?" a voice asked beside me. I turned to find a woman about my age, elegantly dressed in a blue cocktail dress, her dark hair swept up in a stylish updo. "Is it that obvious?" I asked with a small laugh. She smiled. "You have that wide-eyed look. I'm Mia, by the way." "Ella," I replied, shaking her outstretched hand. "Are you traveling alone?" she asked. I nodded. "It was a last-minute decision." "The best kind?" Mia said with a knowing smile. "I'm with a group of friends, but they're all coupled up. I could use an ally. Would you like to join us for dinner?" Under normal circumstances, I might have declined, preferring solitude to the company of strangers. But something about this journey felt different, a chance to step outside my comfort zone in more ways than one. "I'd love to," I replied. As I followed Mia through the crowd, I felt the last vestiges of tension melt away. The ship surged forward into the darkening horizon, carrying me toward experiences unknown. For the first time in years, I felt truly free. Not just from my parents' manipulation, but from my own self-imposed limitations. The cruise had only just begun, but already I knew it would change me in ways I couldn't yet imagine.